Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Lettermen Row. It is Mick Walker on the other side of your screen. I am Spencer Holbrook. It is a Monday breakdown, a rapid reaction, a practice report, whatever you want to call it. It's Lettermen Row. It's Lettermen Row presented by Big Game Football Factory. You've heard me talk about them. You love when I talk about them. It's the football from Big Game Football Factory. Buckeye Nation, the wait is over. Ohio State, of course, national champions. You see it right there with the logo. The Buckeyes are national champions. Now you can own a piece of that historic victory. Introducing the limited edition 2025 College Football Playoff Ohio State football, the exact ball the Buckeyes used throughout the College Football Playoff and into the national championship game. It is handcrafted and customized. The football has this fractal swoosh, the gray swoosh that you come to know and love when you watch the Buckeyes play football. It's got the College Football Playoff logo on it. It's got the Ohio State logo on it. That's iconic enough. Look at this thing. Perfect handcrafted leather. Go to biggameusa.com/Buckeyes. Snag yours before they're gone. They're almost gone. Own it for yourself, or it's a perfect gift for the other Ohio State fanatics in your life. Ohio State football is more than a game. It's a way of life. Now you can own a piece of the Buckeyes national championship win. It's the exact ball this team used to win the national championship. Keep it high and tight. Ball security is job security. That's what I'm trying to do here at the program at Lettermen Row. Got my Roback on. We'll talk about them in just a little bit. This is a brand new one, by the way, so I'm going to talk about it for a while once we get there, Mick. Mick, you had a couple days off, Thursday, Friday. That's why we didn't do a video after we heard from the Buckeyes on Friday. So let's talk Ohio State and what we heard from all 10 assistants and head coach Ryan Day on Friday. I hope you enjoyed your time off. You were severely missed, sorely missed, I guess is the correct terminology there, inside the Woody Hayes Athletic Center on Friday. But we got through it with just me there. What did you learn? Because I have some things that I've learned. I really want to talk about what Ryan Day said about breaking down the new look at spring football and the way that they're going to do that. But what did you learn, maybe as somebody who was watching from afar?
Yeah, as fate would have it, the time I scheduled off 5 months ago happened to be the first time we spoke to any Ryan Day or any assistants and since the national championship. So that's just the luck of the draw there. But like you said, did a little bit of YouTube watching this morning, caught up on some videos, caught up on some conversations that you kind of shared with me. And I think really the first thing that stood out was the way everything was kind of handled with the pushback that I think everybody kind of had with the Matt Patricia stuff, whether that was the personal off-field stuff, whether the fit from a scheme fit, from an off-the-field fit. Seems like Matt Patricia faced that head on, was kind of open and honest. I think impressed not only you, but a lot of the other media members that were there. I think Ryan Day's approach to it and what he said about everything, about the allegations and the stuff that Matt Patricia's past was pretty honest and transparent about not only his involvement, but Ross Bjork's involvement and some of the things beyond that. So Matt Patricia's just overall introduction to the Ohio State media members and the Ohio State beat was something that I was fascinated to see, and it seems like it went over pretty smoothly, all things considered, on Friday.
Yeah, it was interesting to talk to Matt Patricia. It was interesting to talk to Tyler Bowen, the two new guys in the building. Obviously, some of these other guys are elevated or in new positions, like Billy Fessler, but we've talked to him before, off to the side, just in conversations. Not really talked to him in a professional setting, I guess, as far as like up at the podium. But we've talked to him before. It was really all about Tyler Bowen and Matt Patricia. Before we get into those guys and exactly what they had to say, because I think there is some noteworthy stuff in there. Ryan Day made some comments on Friday about Ohio State spring practice. He said, quote, "You have 15 opportunities, and in the past, those were all padded practices, very physical. That will not be the case for sure this spring. We'll use some helmeted practice, almost like OTA style, to take some of those. There will be more teaching opportunities to be smart there." That is much different than what we've heard in the past about how Ohio State is going to construct spring practice, Mick. I do not expect it to be anywhere near the same that we've seen in the past. Ryan Day has NFL experience. Matt Patricia has NFL experience. Tyler Bowen has NFL experience. Brian Hartline played in the NFL. And a lot of these other guys know exactly what the NFL does for its OTAs. I do expect this to be much more of an OTA style moving forward into March and April than we're used to in the past. But I also think that, his other quote that said, there's some veteran guys who are going to be treated a little differently. Then he said the next group are the guys that have played a lot of football but are now in different roles that really need to step up and become starters. And then you have guys who just got here that need a ton of football. This is going to be a different style of spring.
Yeah, and I think that the approach makes a lot of sense physically on the bodies of not only the players that were playing at Ohio State, but the guys that were transferred in. Like, everybody put a lot of wear and tear on their body playing a high number of games last season, most in college football history, I believe. So when you factor that in, it's like, yeah, we need to give these guys a lot of time off. But then you also consider you're breaking in 2 new tackles. You essentially have a quarterback competition going on. Carlos Locklin also made it very clear you have a running back competition going on for who's going to kind of be the lead guy. Then you're also breaking in probably a new corner, a new linebacker. Like you go up and down across the defense, offense, you're breaking in a lot of guys. Like Ryan Day said, you have a few guys that are returning that kind of stand out amongst the pack. And it's like, okay, these guys don't need a lot of reps, but there's still a lot of guys that, whether it's transfers or true freshmen or like redshirt freshmen or sophomores, like they need a lot of reps. So the delicate balance of kind of repping that stuff hard, but also getting some of these guys rest and kind of recuperation after a long season, I'll be fascinated to see. And I think we talked about it on the Lettermen Lounge message board, you and I, and a couple other posters. I mean, I think Ryan Day has earned the benefit of the doubt in a lot of things, but I think his management of his team and kind of the schedule is one of the highest things on that list, because after how last season went with how many games they played, how they peaked in the college football playoff and everything considered in those. So I think he's earned that benefit of the doubt, but it's going to be a delicate thing that him and Mick Marotti kind of have to balance as they get through this spring.
Yeah, and it's something that I'm very anxious to see, just because we haven't seen this ever from Ohio State. We've seen programs canceling their spring games. They're moving away from the spring game, Ohio State among them. Not canceling it, but moving to a spring showcase. Ryan Day, not revealing what that's going to be. I did write about that a little bit on Monday at LettermenRow.com. Just we don't know what the spring game is going to look like because now it's a spring showcase. But overall, spring is changing, and I think eventually this will even get to more of an OTA than it does, spring football. You're not doing Oklahoma drill for 15 practices in the spring anymore. It's going to be a lot different, especially for these programs like Ohio State laid out the blueprint for talking openly about wanting to play 16 games last year or 15 games or 17 games. And they did it. They know what that has looked like, and they knew in real time how to react to things, how to proactively get these guys ready for things. The Buckeyes looked like the more fresh team in almost all of their college football playoff games. I think them in Texas probably looked the same physicality-wise, but other than that, like Ohio State was very clearly more physical, more well-rested, better looking than the other teams on the field with them. And so the blueprint is there for this program to do that, but also tweak it to make sure spring football sets them up for success in not just August and September, but in November, December, and January, because this team wants to win another national championship. And so I like the approach that Ryan Day is taking. I like the tone that he's setting for the opening of spring ball. It's not going to look the same. There might not even be as much to learn from spring ball as we're used to. But Lettermen Row is going to cover it the same regardless. And hopefully we learn quite a bit about this team, because there's a lot to learn, which brings me into my next thing. We heard about a lot of different guys, Mick, and I know everybody wants to talk quarterback, so let's get that out of the way. Billy Fessler talked about the strengths of each of these guys. Ryan Day said it was going to be an open competition. He said they're going to roll guys, especially in the first couple of weeks. Like, they're going to roll through all of their quarterbacks, give them valuable reps. They're all really young guys, not a lot of experience. How did that hit your ears? What do you think of the quarterback plan there for at least the beginning of spring ball? Because I personally like it.
Yeah, I think it's a good plan. And I think, honestly, whether it's Billy Fessler or what Ryan Day said, and I don't know if they're listening to everything that's getting said at the combine by some of these guys that had just declared for the draft, whether it's Denzel Burke and what he said, but it felt like a little bit more cushioning, a little more padding against kind of what some of those guys said about whether it was Julian Saint's going to be the guy or X, Y, and Z about what Saint can do. Like, I think they were understood that was kind of said, and that was the buzz amongst the fan base. So they decided they were going to take Friday to kind of tap the brakes on that and make sure that people understand Lincoln Keenels is in this. Tavian St. Clair is going to be throwing the ball around. I don't know if he's necessarily in this all the same, but there's going to be a large group of guys that are competing for this spot and trying to become Ohio State's next starting quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, I think Sayin has the leg up just because I think the talent level is different than the other two, but we'll see what happens. I mean, Ryan Day making it very clear, like you said, that just because the buzz is around Julian Sayin doesn't mean he's just going to waltz in and win the job here in the spring. The other guy that I think made headlines before we get into the real nitty-gritty was CJ Hicks. Lettermen Row reported January 23rd, I think, or 24th, that CJ Hicks was going to make the move to the edge. It was pretty much widely known, but then Larry Johnson confirmed it on Friday that CJ Hicks has been working in his department, in his room with the defensive lineman as an edge. I'm very excited about this move. Fool me once, fool me twice, you know the saying. I'm back in on thinking CJ Hicks can be a a real game-changing player for this Ohio State defense if used properly. And it seems like they're finally going to start using him in the way that a lot of fans have been clamoring for him to be used for a few years now, and that is as an edge rusher. He was called the best blitzer on the team, I think, by James Laurinaitis last year. And then he even said that he thought he was the best blitzer on the team. He's going to get to prove that because he's going to be rushing off the edge now. The interesting thing, though, for me was that Larry Johnson said that he needs to make sure he's a 3-down player who can stop the run, too. They don't want him to be a gadget player, and I think that's noteworthy as he goes into his first spring in the defensive line room.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing is that whether it's been other guys in the career like Mitchell Melton or some other guys, you can go down the list of their Ohio State career. Like, gadget players don't play at Ohio State. Like, the games that Ohio State has to play, the teams that they're going to go against, like, you can't play a gadget player because they're not going to be able to, like Larry Johnson said, play 3 down. So hearing that CJ is in that defensive line room is important, but also hearing that Larry Johnson has kind of an emphasis for him it was good to hear. I mean, if you look back at CJ, he started his high school career as a cornerback, played there for a season. I think he moved in kind of a nickel role as a sophomore in high school, played safety as a junior, then more safety linebacker as a senior, and now he's bumped around a couple positions, different kind of spots, middle, outside, all these throughout his Ohio State career. So it's just good to see him at probably his best spot for the future, and seems like he's locked in. Hopefully he's embracing it for the spring. I think you and I both know CJ pretty well, that he's not only excited for this move, but probably fully prepared to take full advantage of everything that's going to be kind of presented to him with a lighter edge room when it comes to just Kenyatta Jackson and Caden Curry as the known commodities, I would say.
I think the big thing that helps CJ is the fact that he's bought into it. Like, Ohio State doesn't make these moves, doesn't move guys to the edge, doesn't move guys from, doesn't move a Sonny Styles from safety to linebacker unless he wants to do that. Like, it's a two-way street with these position changes. CJ very clearly, I think by all accounts, including our own, really wanted to be on the edge last year. He wanted to blitz the quarterback. He wanted to rush the passer. He wants to be like an edge rushing 3-4 outside linebacker. And he hasn't been able to do that. I think now that he's bought in, I'm pretty sure that he's going to embrace that to the fullest extent, and I think Ohio State will embrace that in kind. I'm very excited to see what he does. Very excited to see what he does on the edge for Ohio State this spring. And you know what? If it doesn't work out after the spring, then you reevaluate. But I think that Ohio State is onto something here. I think the Buckeyes know they're onto something here. And so we'll see how it goes. We'll also see me every single day this spring without fail. Well, I don't have 7 of them. So if we get 7 straight days of coverage, I don't think I can wear every single day. If you see me at the Woody, you're probably going to see me in Roback. Roback activewear. The only way to describe Roback is best fit, best feel. That's right. I added another hoodie to my collection. This one is the jungle green. I thought it was gray because I'm colorblind. It turns out that it's like a green teal. Apparently, it's a pretty color. That's what I've been told. There's a ton of colors over at Roback.com. And then you get 20% off when you use code Lettermen20. That's right, Lettermen 20 at checkout on Roback.com. You get 20% off your first order. Mick, I'm going to continue to order things. I'm going to keep beating the drum for this. I've got a golf trip in a couple months that I'm going to be wearing Roback on the golf course. I've got things that I'm going to be covering for LettermenRow.com at the Woody Hayes Athletic Center. I will be in Roback. If I go to church, probably going to be wearing a Roback. If I go to the gym, you can wear Roback to the gym. Oh, by the way, I covered a national championship game in a Roback hoodie. Like, it is the ultimate performance hoodie, the ultimate work hoodie, whatever you need. They also have pants, they have shorts, they have polos, they have quarter zips. It is, without fail, my favorite brand on the planet that doesn't pay me directly, because Lettermen Row is my favorite brand on the planet. So we'll just say it that way. I love Roback Activewear. Best fit, best feel. Go to Roback.com right now. Lettermen20 is the checkout code. Lettermen20, Lettermen 20 at RHOBACK.com, Roback.com, Lettermen20 at checkout. You can look like me, only you'll probably look better in it than I do. And then also, you know what you can do in your Roback hoodie? You can tote this rock, Nick. Because with Big Game Factory, go to BigGameUSA.com/Buckeyes. Get this football right now. That's right, BigGameUSA.com/Buckeyes. Get this football right now. It's got the Ohio State logo, the CFP logo, the Ohio State swoosh. You guys know the drill. Go get one of those footballs, high and tight. Ball security is job security. That's what I'm doing. Roback hoodie, a Big Game Factory football. What more can you ask for other than more breakdown of the Buckeyes? Let's talk about it, Mick. What else did you hear? What caught your ear? Like, oh man, like that's interesting, because I've got a couple more. I just want to give you the runway here before I jump in.
No, I think I'm going to pass it back to you real quick. But you posted some great names on the Letterman Lounge message board, some kind of notes. And as it happens with most of the time when Spencer and I cover an event, if we're not together, we typically call each other afterwards. If nothing else, you kind of compose your thoughts while talking to another person, kind of bounce them off each other. And I think Spencer did that on Friday. I imagine he was wearing Roback then. He's wearing Roback now. So I'll give him the mic again, and we'll hear some of his takeaways from it. Because, again, I was not in the Woody, but Spencer was, and I imagine he was wearing his Roback.
Yeah, I mean, it obviously goes to Tyler Bowen and Brian Hartline working together because, one of the big things that Ryan Day stressed, and, Ryan Day doesn't say anything on accident. One of the things he stressed was that, Tyler Bowen has play calling experience. Brian Hartline's going to be a first-time play caller. So I think that's important to know. Tyler Bowen was talking about Brian Hartline, said he's as organized as anyone he's ever been around. Brian Hartline said that nothing's going to change in his receiver room because of his organization and the way that he has organized himself to make sure that he's not pulled away from a wide receiver activity to do offensive coordinator things. I think that's good news for the wide receiver room. I think it's good news that Brian Hartline has matured and is as organized as he is. I think it's good news that Tyler Bowen wants to be a helping hand in the run game and craft that run game to the way that he wants. But also seems like the thing that he said about his transition back to the offensive line room and coaching offensive line again is that he's back to his roots. He seemed very excited about that idea. And I think that should excite Ohio State fans. Like, you've got an offensive coordinator that's eager to prove himself, but still wants to coach his wide receivers. You have a offensive line coach that's eager to get back to what he calls his roots, while also wanting to craft a run game. You've got a head coach that's going to be watching over all of it and making sure that it's tailored to what Ryan Day loves in his offenses, and those have been super successful. It's a young group. It's an inexperienced group by and large, but man, it's hard not to be excited about this Ohio State offensive staff and what they've compiled and what they think they're onto here.
Yeah, I think the whole stuff about tying kind of the play calling duties and kind of mixing them together and the importance of Tyler Bowen having play calling experience was something that as you like to say, caught my ear, kind of just going through some stuff. And I think the big thing that the other thing that kind of got talked about on Friday and that you and I have been talking about a lot of this spring was this whole Malik Hartford, Jalen McClain safety battle when it comes to the guy that is going to play next to Caleb Downs. I imagine it could be both, but I imagine there's also a constant fighting about who's going to kind of be that starter. Did you get anything really, whether it's Matt Carrera, Matt Patricia, Tim Walton, anything from those guys on Friday?
I think it's interesting. From what I know, I think McClain played a lot more than Hartford did this year because it was Lathan Ransom that got hurt, and I think that McClain kind of fit the Ransom mold better than Hartford, whereas Hartford probably fits the Caleb Downs role better than McClain. So I think that's probably why Ohio State played McClain more this past year. Not that Hartford can't do those things, which I think is some insight into what the expectation is for both those guys. I think McClain, in all honesty, from what I know, I think McClain enters spring as the guy to beat in the battle. That doesn't mean that I think he's leading the battle. Does that make sense? I think, I guess he is leading the battle if he's the guy to beat, but if I were handicapping it, I would say he's the favorite to win the job, but that doesn't mean that he's going to win it by any means, because I think Malik Hartford's had a really good winter from things that I've heard. So I like both of those guys. I like what both of them bring to the table. I know, this isn't just an I think thing. This is an I know thing. I know Ohio State likes what both of them bring to the table. I wouldn't be surprised if both of them play instead of just one of them earning the starting spot. Somebody's got to start with Downs. But I think if both of them play, it would be better for Ohio State and for both of them. I think that's the best battle we've got the entire spring. I think the quarterback battle, I do think that there's some separation there, whether, the coaches want to acknowledge it or not. We know what we've seen from guys. The running back battle, I think, is a little less important just because Lachlan showed that he can play 3 running backs and it'll be fine. So you can play as many guys as you need to and it'll be okay. The offensive line, I think, is fairly settled as far as the interior. I think the tackles still need to prove themselves. But yeah, I think the safety battle, just as far as who is going to start and who will be on the bench, is the most intriguing position battle of the entire spring. And I don't think it's going to be settled at the end of spring, which makes it even more intriguing because it'll probably go into the fall.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned it there with Carlos Loughlin and 3 running backs kind of playing different guys. Like James Peoples got involved last year. From the sounds of it, obviously James Peoples, CJ Donaldson, the transfer from West Virginia, seem to be the guys that are going to tote the rock the most for Ohio State. But you also caught a little buzz on freshman Bo Jackson, who's been recovering from an injury and kind of seems to be taking form right now as we get started for spring practice.
Yeah, I mean, I was talking to somebody just for a couple minutes, and I think the growing sentiment is like, don't just ignore Bo Jackson. Like, make sure you know Bo, because
Bo knows.
if he takes care of, because Bo knows if he takes care of business in the spring, like, there's no reason that he can't earn a job over CJ Donaldson, over James Peoples. At least make those guys split carries and then sweat out whether they're going to get beat by week 5. Like, I'm very curious as to what happens with Bo. I'm also very curious as to what happens on the defensive line. And, these are just, it's kind of a rambling show here, but it is just like all the rumblings of like what we know with a week until spring starts. Ryan Day was asked what the biggest concern is heading into spring ball. He talked about depth at some offensive positions, but he said depth at defensive line, they're losing 5 guys. 4 starters and Hero Canoe. And he even said Hero's name as like a guy that they lost that, is going to be hard to replace. So they need 5 bodies to step up. Right now, I think they have 4. I think they have Caden McDonald, who they're going to feel good about. I think they feel really good about Edric Houston's progress. I think they feel really good about Kenyatta Jackson. And then I think they feel good about a combination of Logan George and Caden Curry. But I wouldn't put that at a full 5. I would put it at more like 4. And then from there, I think you need guys such as, like an Eric Mensah, like a Jason Moore, like a Josh Mickens, like a Will Smith Jr. Like, those guys have to step up, because I don't think you're going to get that in the trenches help from a true freshman, because I don't think there's an Edric Houston in this 2025 Ohio State recruiting class. So, running back has my interest as like a battle. And then defensive line, I think, is just one massive hodgepodge of a battle. Tywan Malone included. I didn't mention his name, but he's still there. Like, they've got to get that figured out, because, that was a question that was also about the transfer portal, and Ryan Day brought up defensive line on his own. So I think that right now they're probably heading into spring thinking, well, if we are not feeling good enough exiting spring practice, there's always the portal. And I think that's very interesting.
Yeah, and then they have yet to play down a football at Ohio State, so we're not going to keep harping on them. But it feels like every single time that we've podcasted since December when these 2 guys signed, we've said something about them, and that would be linebackers TJ Alford and Riley Pettijohn. Like, I don't know how much more we can say about 2 guys that have not played a snap before. They haven't even put on pads at Ohio State. But whether you talk to somebody or I talk to somebody, you talk to players, coaches, whoever it is, these 2 guys continue to come up, and it's tough because you got a Sonny Styles, who I think is probably going to be a block out captain guy, a linebacker. And you got a guy like Arvo Reese that I believe, Cody Simon played really well last year, but he could have played even more snaps than he was asked to. So you have 2 true freshmen and those 2 guys sitting there. And let's not forget about a Peyton Pierce or a Garrett Stover. So this linebacker room is talented under James Laurinaitis, and it has 2 great freshmen. 3, if you ask James Laurinaitis, he would start with Eli Lee in there too.
Well, those 2, I think Pettijohn, and if you're like odds to play special teams this year, Riley Pettijohn, TJ Alford, like minus 5 billion. They wouldn't even have it on the board on FanDuel Sportsbook. Like, it's just no question they're gonna play special teams for Ohio State this year. Just like Peyton Pierce played special teams for Ohio State last year. Like, they're cutting their teeth there. And I think those 2 freshman linebackers have a real chance to make an impact, not just on special teams, but like, if you're talking second team linebackers, like, those guys keep improving. They're going to push Garrett Stover. They're going to push Peyton Pierce. Like, you think your job is to, we haven't even heard anything about Ty Howard from Duquesne, who is an all-conference performer and at his level that he was at. So, like the linebacker room, I mean, we say it all the time. Like, Ohio State's not going to rebuild. They're just going to reload. And I think especially here, like, you look at the 15 guys they lost. They lose 15 guys in the NFL Combine. That's a ton of talent. They only lost 17 total. And I think they lost like 5 or 6 more in the transfer portal, and none of them were guys that I think Ohio State was like weeping over losing. No offense to any of those guys, but like, there wasn't a single guy on the from Ohio State that entered the transfer portal where you're like, oh man, that's like a decently big loss. It just wasn't. And so I think they feel really good about this roster right now heading into spring. It's the growing sentiment that I got. Obviously, there's a lot more to cover. That's why we're going to be back here on Tuesday to talk more Ohio State football. That's Mick Walker. I'm just Spencer Holbrook on the other side of his screen. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Obviously, a big breakdown here. We're just going to keep trying to slog through it, make sure that we're flushing out all this information because there's a lot to get to. We talked to Ryan Day and all 10 assistant coaches on Friday. That's a lot to digest. We're still working through it. This was like a Cliff Notes version. We're going to go a little bit more in-depth as we go through the week here at LettermenRow.com. In the meantime, go to LettermenRow.com right now. $1 for your first week. That gets you into spring football. You're not going to want to miss that. We broke 3 coaching news stories last week. Mick had a lot of visitor intel. I had some intel on what I'm hearing about the roster. AG's doing some stuff as well. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We will see you guys back here on Tuesday for another edition of Lettermen Row. Go to Roback, 20% off, Lettermen 20, and go to BigGameUSA.com/Buckeyes for a football. We'll see you guys back here tomorrow.